There are a lot of therapists, let's say, working with the previous generation, not the AI generation that we have right now, that have learned, okay, I'm going to give you some home exercises, or you're going to pick, which color is your body, feeling like right now. Let's go pick an activity that's going to help you feel better, and then let's get back to work. So those frameworks end up being very limited because, to your point about neuroplasticity, we need novelty and we need goal-directed behavior, which means the child has to have an intention behind what they're doing.
Parenting a child with special needs can feel like you're constantly pushing through barriers. But it's a journey filled with love, often marked by isolation, unanswered questions, moments that make you question if you're doing enough. Breaking Limits podcast is a safe space that tackles the parent experience. For parents ready to trade isolation for inspiration or confusion for clarity, real talk, real tools, real breakthroughs, where we hold conversations, ask the hard questions, and remind you that you're not alone walking this path. I'm your host, Dr. Vivienne Pierre, physical therapist, advocate, fellow warrior. On this journey, I'm excited to share these conversations with you that are so close to many of your hearts. I welcome you to the Breaking Limits podcast.
If you're a parent who has ever felt like your child doesn't quite fit the mold, if you've ever been told to just manage the behavior instead of understanding what's actually going on, or if you've ever wondered how on earth you're supposed to raise a confident, capable child in a world dominated by screens, technology, and now artificial intelligence, you guys are in the right place today. Welcome back to the Breaking Limits, the podcast that is rewriting the narrative for parents of children with special needs. And as you know, this isn't just a show. It's a safe space for the true parent experience where the hard conversations happen, where we challenge the limits placed on families, children, and what's possible when we stop following broken systems. It's a place where you are reminded that you're not alone on this journey. I'm your host, Dr. Vivienne Pierre, physical therapist, advocate, coach, real estate investor, author, and a fierce believer that our children are here to show us what's possible, not what's broken. So we're here to break the silence, break the stigma, and most of all, break the limits of what is possible. Today's children are growing up in a digital world no previous generation has experienced. And for neurodiverse children, those with sensory differences, learning differences, or nervous systems that experience the world more intensely, the stakes are definitely even higher. But here's the good news. This generation isn't broken. They're wired differently. Yes, we know. And when supported intentionally, they may be the most creative, adaptable, and innovative leaders we've ever seen. In today's episode, we are diving into the world of sensory integration, nervous system regulation, and intentional learning in a digital and AI-driven era. What it is, why it matters, and how parents can move from overwhelm and fear to confidence, connection, and empowered leadership. That's why I am so excited today to introduce today's guest, because this is exactly what Neuropedia Connect exists for, to remind families to equip themselves with the knowledge, tools, and community they need to move forward in this new world that we live in today with the confidence that they need. I'm honored to welcome Aubrey Schmalle.
You got it.
Sensory integrative occupational therapist for over 20 years, founder of Sensational Achievements, and author of the new book, Uniquely Human, Raising Leaders and Creators in an AI World. Aubrey specializes in helping parents, educators, and children understand how sensory processing, movement, connection, and digital awareness all work together to support regulation, learning, confidence, especially for the neurodiverse population in today's world. Her work centers around 5 powerful pillars: saving yourself first as a parent, connecting and collaborating with your child and care team, moving with purpose, learning and growing sensationally, and building digital awareness and safety. What I appreciate most about Aubrey's approach is that it doesn't chase quick fixes or trends. It honors the whole child and honors the family as it gives parents practical tools they can actually use. So we'll hear insights in how parents can regulate themselves first and lead with confidence instead of burnout, why connection, collaboration, and purposeful movement are foundational, not optional, for learning and growth, and how to support children safely and intentionally in digital spaces while preparing them for the future that we have today. So Aubrey, I am so grateful to have you here because this is a
Thank you.
big conversation. This
It
is
is
a
a
big
huge
area
conversation
today.
and may not fit all in one day, but we'll try to
But we're
chip away
definitely
at
going to
it.
get it started for sure, because this is a conversation that people really need to talk about. And I think that people are afraid of AI. I know that, like, I have my like reservations and stuff, even for myself. But before we dive right in, I want people to know exactly who Aubrey Schmalle is. As an OT, tell me how it even got you to this space of having your own practice and dealing with sensory integration specifically.
So, well, my mother was a nurse, and so she kind of pointed me in the direction of healthcare, but I actually fell into sensory integration during a lab at Boston University where I had the chance to go to OTA Watertown, which is now the Kumar Center, and they are one of the leaders in sensory integrative research. So, just seeing how I could use play, something that I did naturally in my babysitting and in my, things that I did in high school, and that I could do this as a job without really committing to, any one direction, because OT is really about giving people skills for the job of living, right? And if that is the mantra of OT, it means I don't just have to learn about exercise. I don't just have to learn about school. I can really help children through play learn how to adapt to the world around them better, and then help the people in their lives learn the secrets that are going to help those children thrive as well.
Well said. That is so true. And that's an area even for us adults like we're missing.
Yeah.
We're not playing enough. That's the reality.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We're losing a lot of things, and we're affecting, and between the levels of stress that's going on and depression, all these different things that as adults I'm finding that as adults we are also dysregulated,
Yes.
right?
And yet we're told that somewhere, between elementary school and middle school, we don't need recess. We don't need time to be outdoors. We should have the attention span to sit longer, do more, and be more productive. But there is no high performer that does that on a daily basis. And in
That's
fact,
right.
they do quite the opposite, because in the high performance space, they're aware that these are lifelong habits. These are not just things that kids do when they're younger because kids can't sit still for long enough.
That's right. And we see it integrated because I do a lot of, in my real estate investing and all of these different things as an author and the networking that I do, you're seeing these high performance individuals really intertwine those things in their daily habits. You
Yes.
talk about Miracle Morning and stuff in your book, and you talk about the habits that we have and what we are doing and how we're passing along those habits. So it's so important, to be able to do that. But the truth is, we're seeing more anxiety, more sensory overload, more emotional dysregulation and struggles than ever before, and people think that it's such a behavioral issue. These kids are being labeled as lazy, as troubled kids, as all these different things are coming up. So, from your perspective as a sensory integrative OT, what is actually happening to children today, especially the neurodiverse children growing up right now in this digital world?
So because the brain and the body learn through connecting and reconnecting information and experiences infinitely in different ways, we are the opposite of an algorithm, right? We don't learn linearly. We learn through multisensory life experiences, combining those experiences with our social interactions. But really, in all the research that has ever been done, if you put, let's say, children in a sensory deprived environment like Russian orphanages or something like that, where they're not allowed those experiences, they miss critical foundational sensory experiences for development that help their brain connect all the information and be able to go confidently in the world. But the interesting thing is, while that research was 20 years ago or more than 20 years ago at this point, we're seeing the same results from the research that we're getting now about screen time at every age, disrupting how much time you're spending out in the world, getting that multisensory feedback. And so we're creating all these programs to sell to individuals to get them to spend more and more time in things that the AI and computer industry are telling us help our kids learn. And we've forgotten what it was that really does help them learn and grow and be adaptable and resilient in the world. So we've truncated those sensory experiences. And now those micro opportunities have created a cascade of disruption to development. And all the educators will tell you the kids are different. They're more distracted. The tantrums are bigger than ever before. They're struggling more and more with learning. And kids who maybe, weren't labeled as ADHD before have almost like a tech-induced ADHD because they don't have capacity for learning in the way that they did before.
And I think that's so true. And I think that, because I'm old school, and I grew up in Trinidad and Tobago. So, we grew up very differently as well. And, you know, I think that we confuse stimulation with this input, this AI stimulation and this constant stimulation that we're getting. I don't know that you talk about the importance of that multi-sensory, but the senses, the five senses plus the two that you talk about, the proprioception and the vestibular that most people forget about, that people don't take in. They think that the stimulation that people are getting, they're not understanding that we're not actually getting that type of stimulation. So can we expand on that a little bit? Because even though you said something and I thought, wow, this is interesting to me, that you did a stat here. Let me see. It says 26% of 8 to 12-year-olds spend about 4 to 8 hours, a day on screen time. And then 29% of teens spend about greater than 8 hours per day. That's a lot of screen time. I remember growing up, and we used to be outside, and the old thing that said, "Hey, when the street lights come home,
Right.
come on, you better get yourself inside." And that's not what we're seeing anymore. We're not seeing kids outside. As I go around looking for properties and helping a lot of families get out of distressed situations, and I see kids outside playing, I'm always like, wow, like it's sort of not normal anymore. You know what I mean?
Well,
So
and it's interesting because there was this parent fear that evolved when we became aware that children might be canvassed if they were left alone on the street, or the era of latchkey children when parents went back to work and you were at home. And if they were outside in the world, that something bad could happen to them when you're not around. The thing is that what we know now and all the legal things that are going on with roadblocks and the new acts, that the Kids Online Safety Act that is gradually figuring out how to implement that for standards on Instagram. What we've seen is that it's not the people that you meet outside. The predators just changed their approach. They went inside. And now they get to our children through the computer and through the spaces that we told ourselves were safer for them. And unfortunately, the backlash, as the tech world has said, these are the solutions. These are the places that your kids should play. These are the places that kids should spend their time for learning. We stopped understanding that the real growth and development actually happens through movement. And when I was in school, we were taught that the cerebellum of the brain was just a motor organ, that was its main function.
yeah.
We know now that that is so far from the truth, that what we were told, that the brain is not segmented like that the cerebellum that was thought to be a motor organ stimulated through movement actually has projections to every other part of the brain to build social skills, creativity, executive function, language skills, and all of those other things that children need to thrive. And there's actually even been a study in older adults that when they're moving less or they have any kind of vestibular dysfunction, since your vestibular organ is that system that senses movement, directionality, speed, that they experience cognitive decline, that they experience more depression. So we do see that lack of movement impacts mental health. It impacts the connections and the wiring inside of our systems and our ability to develop skill. So even in like spaces like dyslexia, okay, we have tons of reading interventions for dyslexia, but what are the ones that are most effective? Actually, juggling is something that is being used to improve phonological awareness and lexical decision making. That doesn't make sense in any reading conversation that I've ever had. But it does make sense when you understand how the brain and the body learn. And if you optimize the body's ability to adapt to the things that are coming at them from the environment, they can read better, they can learn better, they can think better. And you're actually building a brain that can problem solve and that can have more competence and confidence out in the world.
And this is very important, especially in the neurodiverse population, because you're talking about movement. And in this population, I mean, apart from being very vulnerable in this space, the movement aspect can be significantly affected. The
Yes.
ability for these kids to move, whether, because of different genetic conditions or anything or neurological system breakdowns that they have,
Hmm.
and so the inability for them to move and being just placed in front of a screen as opposed to promoting that movement. I see this when I was working in the clinic, the progression that we see, especially using dynamic movement interventions and stuff like that, to be able to get these kids moving, to be able to introduce play, to have learning happen during that, to have them explore all those things that were super important that for us, I feel like was second nature. When
Hmm.
we were growing up,
Yeah.
I mean, I just remember that I didn't even like think about being inside and we didn't have computers like that, to be quite honest with you. Back in the day, that wasn't a thing. I was of the generation where that was that switch over, you know what I mean? Into 10 input 20 was where we started with the computers, right?
The internet is the future, so everybody better learn about computers
Right,
and start
right.
learning how to use computers because that's what's going to help us. But now we've moved past that era.
Yeah, yeah,
The ease learning model is gone
it's gone.
because we're in AI now, and AI is taking all those mid-level computer jobs. And now we have AI agents that can do the basic jobs. We never put I know Excel on a resume anymore. Why? Because if you don't know Excel, that's a bigger problem. We're just assuming that's part of your skill set at this point. And I think what we're finding though is that once these AI agents begin to replace some of those lower level activities that can be, very easily outsourced, we're not just competing against, our jobs getting outsourced to other countries. We really need to rethink the way that we're helping our children develop because the uniquely human skills that they now need to thrive are not, do I know how to work the AI? It's do I even have the language skills and the depth of my writing and communication to prompt AI in the right direction? Do I have the ability to communicate face to face with others, even though most of my history has been communicating via chat and online, so that I can collaborate with a team, so that I can come up with solutions? And then more and more, the trades are becoming an ever growing space for people. Why? Because we told people to leave the trades that they were low level jobs and go into technology. And now that everyone has done that, we stopped working on cars. We stopped doing all these hands on learning experiences and said, go learn technology, go spend more time in front of the computer. Guess what? Those guys are the new millionaires. Why? Because they have
Right
all
back.
the knowledge. And then our neurodiverse children who are struggling to develop fine motor skills, they're struggling to be able to use their bodies effectively. But guess what? Those kinds of jobs are actually perfect for them when they're actually learning through movement and through those multisensory experiences. So it's not a job to say, okay, don't go near that because you're never going to make any money. That's not true. That's actually going to be a very important place for children to move to when they don't have the supervisory skills or the leadership skills to be the people that can oversee the other people that are running the AI tools. So
So
there's
what's
so many directions we can go and so many different skills that children need now, but we also have to rethink where they're fitting in society and what skills we're giving them.
so how do parents and how how do parents better then integrate this type of thinking now into their daily lives? How do they turn around and say, okay, AI is here to stay? You're talking about them looking at this and switching their thinking around
Yep.
what could be possible for their kids
Yep.
for an adaptability that is might be just perfect for them, you know what I mean, to be able to move into these positions and have a future. Because that number one question is what's going to happen to my child in the long term. That's one of the biggest questions that parents face. So as they move into the future, you have what we know is the body activated learning framework. I know I saw that going in, and I would love for you to talk a little bit about that, because I think that kind of is also around what we're talking about right now, and also anything else that you can think of that can really help parents really direct that to what they can do to be able to help facilitate that space and feel like there is hope, feel like there is a path forward for them.
Yeah. So the good news is that it's not necessarily how much therapy you have during the week. It is those micro opportunities that you put in your child's life every day to influence their neurosensory development. And you mentioned the body activated learning framework. That's actually part of pillar 3 in the book, Move with Purpose, because there are intentional types of movement that help build self regulation, that help build goal directed behavior and executive function skills and adaptability. So, for example, we know that rhythm, pressure, and respiration are the only 3 things that you need to decrease stress hormones in the body and improve your ability to regulate throughout the day. So if you think about any even like normal things that you might access for self-care, what is it? They are the massage is pressure based. Rhythm is embedded in walking. Rhythm is embedded in bike riding. We do things rhythmically and repetitively, not just maybe if you've heard about sensory diets and whatnot before, you always talk about like, oh, heavy work and they need pressure. But if you're bouncing around the room and crashing into things, you're not getting it in a rhythmic and organized way that's going to organize your nervous system. But if I set up activities that help you go through either a circuit or that naturally are rhythmic and repetitive, then I'm going to help your nervous system organize. And if you're a child that can't breathe, which is very common for a lot of the kids I work with, they'll never be able to sit down and take a deep breath and meditate and do kids yoga. Blow toys are fantastic because a blow toy, they're just thinking about blowing out, but that naturally facilitates a deeper breath in if they're going to blow harder or in a more controlled way later. So you can actually use breathing as a regulatory skill or tool once kids are able to blow, which sometimes is a little more challenging for some children than others, to again reduce that cortisol and calm the nervous system. But those are the only 3 things: rhythm, pressure, respiration. It's not more complicated than that. And so anything that fits in that bucket is going to be supportive for a child's self regulatory abilities. And then you move into activating movement, which is really anything that prepares a child to use their vision to guide what their body is doing. And in this world, we have overused our visual systems. We've overused our auditory systems as we sit down. And those systems were never designed to just work in isolation. Your eyes were meant to guide your body in the world so that you could use your body more effectively. And we're seeing so much disruption in visual skill development. Actually, in China, they're seeing so much disruption in visual skill development that they this year switched to mandating more movement and more outdoor time inside of their curriculum, because what was happening is they were getting children that weren't eligible as they got older to serve in their military, which for them is a big deal.
Big deal.
So they've shifted their tactic, and what's their answer? Movement. And we need to go back to that goal directed movement, to getting the 2 sides of the body to work together, to improving hand eye coordination and activating all the systems simultaneously. That's what creates adaptability and the ability to adjust to whatever's coming at you in the world and build skills in any direction that you want to build them. And
Now,
so we think about dovetailing those 2 pieces, right? So we get regulation and we get goal-directed movement, that's how we're going to get confidence, competence, and emotional resilience to feel safe in the world with our bodies.
Now, with respect to the regulation and the goal directed movement, we throw around neuroplasticity and the ability for the brain and the body to tune around and create new movement patterns and motor patterns, et cetera, right? Especially the physical therapy world as well, right? As we work closely with you guys when dealing with these kids. Talk a little bit about the neuroplasticity and the importance of the neuroplasticity and the importance of doing these tasks. Because when I think of neuroplasticity, I think of novel tasks. I think of new tasks. I think of whole body movements. I think of those are the things that and even in the physical therapy world, we moved from a very impairment based model to a very functional based model based on the space of neuroplasticity to be able to create these, especially we see that in a lot of individuals with stroke and TBIs and all these different things that are affecting the nervous system dramatically. And in the kids, the evolution and the exponential growth that happens when we do intensive models and stuff like that, that's what I see really create these really big gains and progress. And we see parents, when they understand this idea of neuroplasticity, I feel like that light bulb goes on, and then they see the importance of that introducing those things throughout the day, as opposed to we go to therapy, we spend 1 hour a day, and we think, okay, well, we went to therapy. No, that's
Yeah.
not nearly enough. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yes. So, um, I think what to your point about these novel experiences, right? There are a lot of therapists, let's say, working with the previous generation, not the AI generation that we have right now, that have learned, okay, I'm going to give you some home exercises, or you're going to pick, which color is your body, feeling like right now. Let's go pick an activity that's going to help you feel better, and then let's get back to work. So though those frameworks end up being very limited because, to your point about neuroplasticity, we need novelty and we need goal directed behavior, which means the child has to have an intention behind what they're doing, right? And if you're just having a child pick from a list or pick off a chart, or you're doing a repeatable set of home exercises, you might get strength, you might improve core stability, but you're not going to improve thinking, goal directed movement, and adaptability. And that's where those intensive models, a therapist that's always adjusting and adapting the exercises that they're doing, of course you're going to get change and you're going to see tremendous growth because you're varying your play and you're being very intentional about putting in these different types of movement experiences, as opposed to being like, all right, just give me this list of exercises or this list of things, and this is what I'm going to do every day, and it's going to work, because that is not how the brain and the body were designed. So your micro opportunities are even something as small as like, okay, so I'm not going to the same park every day. One day I'm going to do a walk in the woods and we're going to pick up sticks. And another day I'm going to go to this playground. And then we're going to try that playground, as each of those variations creates the novelty to facilitate the development. And yes, I know some of our kids are super rigid and they don't want the change, but you can even make a calendar as you gradually increase the exposure to new places, where you can then help them rotate throughout the week to different experiences, rather than, you know, just sticking with the one thing that they decided that they like.
And I think this is again my philosophy. And the idea of what you just said to me is so powerful, but it also incorporates the idea that novel tasks does not have to be complicated. And I think that is something that really everybody needs to understand. I said a novel task can be such a small change in what you're doing, because we don't want to make a huge production that it needs to be this huge shift that needs to happen. Because the reality is, we say these things and we throw things out there we don't really understand. We say growth is on the other side of comfort. Like, it rings true in a lot of different things. We just don't really get to the root of what that really is saying to us. And the growth of our kids and the growth of these kids in these different areas is a little bit of that change. I used to say a new way home, and you're looking at different things, and you know what I mean? It's those slight differences that make these big changes. And every single person is capable. All these parents, we are capable. We just have to make the decision to be able to incorporate those things. And so I'm going to back up a little bit to your pillar one, because I know we jumped to pillar three. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
It's like, I saw that. I saw it right there. I was like, I got to
It's
talk
very
about this.
relevant. It's easy. Yes.
But I think this is the thing when you talk about pillar one. Let's talk about pillar one a little bit, because you talk about parents saving themselves first and how they're showing up. They're leading their kids and how they're also showing up. And I think, talking about that is very, very pertinent right here when we're talking about this.
Yes. And one thing I want to acknowledge is that, especially if you are a parent who has children, one child or more than one child with a high level of need, you're juggling so many more things, especially if you're a working parent and you're trying to get your kids to all the therapies that everyone has told you is going to help them, and trying to manage the house and do all the things, right? Because now working parents, they don't get to go home at 5 p.m. They're still answering emails. Work from home sounds great, except for you always have to be checking your email, and your work has come into those spaces where you need that mental space to be present for your children. And so, as we're busy checking off our to-do lists and as we're busy trying to make everything is on our phone now, right? So my scheduling, my play dates that I'm trying to put together, the bills I'm trying to pay, the work emails that I'm trying to do, and what our kids see is this. Not because there's not a million things that we're doing, but because even just switching to doing most things quickly on our device, even ordering dinner, right, disrupts what the child is seeing about the way that life works, right? And so the first thing is, even something as simple as, let's say, that things cost money in the world, right? My friends remember that their grandparents counting out the money for the rent that they collected from their clients. You watched the money piles get bigger and smaller. You realize that, okay, my grandparents have a business that gives them money, and this is the money that I then see my mom taking out of her wallet when we go to the grocery store, and now all of that is just this. I don't know what you're doing half the time, Mom. So the first thing that I'm not seeing is any modeling about how how the real world works, right? Because it's something we don't think about because we're busy on the to-do list, but it's so important to even put back the micro opportunities, making things that you're doing visible to your children, right? That you're writing a list on a piece of paper, that you're intentionally carrying $20 in your wallet so that at least, a couple times a week, they see you using cash and engaging with the world. So those are very simple things. And then the other thing is, how am I regulating myself? Am I using even some of the things that we talked about in pillar 3? It's not specific to children. Adults need all these things too. We need space to regulate. We need time away from our phones and time away from technology that causes us stress, so that when we wake up in the morning, we can do things that regulate ourselves and get us ready to show up better for our children.
The self-care aspect of parents in that space, you're right. It's the checklists, moving from one task to the other task, being on 24/7 and not being able to do this. I have a parent with her child who has Down syndrome, and it took her a while. And then she realized that once a month, she does a spa day. That's it. And for her husband knows it. Like, he's in charge of all the kids. She has 5 kids. And once a month, that's her time. That's her day. And it's only 2 hours.
Yeah.
It's 2 hours of that's just for her.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And he's to handle everything unless there is such an emergency that something has to be done. And it's hard. And there's a lot of guilt for parents for taking the time away or whatever the case is, because they feel if they pull themselves away, if they slow down a little bit, that it is more harmful than hurtful. And you're saying and it's almost like you're saying, I give you permission.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Right.
It's okay to do that, right?
And one of the things I like about how Elrod Saver's method for adults is that you can do it in 7 to 10 minutes a day, right? And we probably waste that much time escaping on our phones in the waiting room to do, to play a little game or to chat with our friends or to post something online. We're already doing things that help us kind of escape our stressors. And something interesting to keep in mind too is that some of our kids gravitate towards technology even more so than typical children because it's less stressful. It's easier to interact with. It's more done for you. And so we think that taking these little tech breaks for ourselves even are things that are going to help us feel better, but actually they're making us more stressed. They're crowding our brains and we have less bandwidth and less capacity for our children. So when we start shifting to interact with technology intentionally and choose when to interact and when to leave it in the other room. Once we get that habit down for ourselves, we can actually start implementing those habits for our children because they'll see you. They'll see you taking your 7 minutes. They'll see you even, at bedtime. If you're having a conversation and you're like, you know what? I had a really hard day too today, and this is what I did to help myself. Kids listen. And they're always picking up on things that are going on, and they will model your language, and they will believe in themselves that they can also have resilience, but that there are things that people do to help themselves, that it's not just mom and everything isn't on mom, but you have to build their adaptability and their confidence in themselves to give you space to be able to do more of those things as well. And that's hard when you're a caregiver because you think that you have to hold up the world and you
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's, you're so right. There's so much imprinting that goes on with kids, right? And we know this, even with non-neurodiverse kids, they're sponges. Oh my gosh. Like, you know what I mean? And they are paying attention. I had a conversation on another podcast that we were talking about kids are always communicating, whether we realize it or not. They're always communicating, and we may not always understand their communication, but they're always also communicating to us, you know
Mhm.
what I mean, in their way. And sometimes we miss it.
Yes.
We miss it because we're not truly listening. You know what I mean? Because we're too busy in that process, and we have to slow down also to be able to receive as well. You know what I mean? In that space of what's going on. And I don't know whether this is a little controversial, but I don't know whether you heard of the telepathy tapes.
I haven't.
And they're talking about telepathy and some different things that were going on with these kids and these neurodiverse kids, and they did a lot of studies about these kids. But the thing I want to highlight is that they were asking questions about the kids, and one of the biggest things that the kids were communicating that parents were unaware of is that they were saying how they noticed that the parents were not taking care of them, and they wish that they were taking care of themselves because they gave everything to them, and it was stressing them out because they saw that they were not taking care of themselves. It was a very interesting thing.
Hmm.
But I mean, it's controversial,
Yeah.
but it was interesting the things that it was bringing out, which is some of what you're talking about here. You know what I mean? And that leads us into the pillar two, where you talk about the connection and the collaboration, right? And the breakdown that's happening in that space that is also super important for development, emotional development, and all of those things. So let's
Right.
move into pillar two and let's
Yeah.
talk about the connection and collaboration.
So as you put down your phone, right, you do show up more intentionally because you're less distracted, right? And you're more available to tune in to body language, to facial expressions, and your child feels more connected to you. And actually, the research shows that definitely in households where you have children that are neurodiverse, both the parents and the kids are on their devices a lot more because everybody's looking for a break. Everybody's looking to be a little bit less stressed. But but the flip side to that is exactly your point. You ask children, and children are getting the message that this is more important than me. And because they don't see your 20 to dos. And you're not involving them in cleaning the house because you're just trying to check off your list. You're not slowing down and connecting with them and collaborating, giving them an opportunity to contribute to the family, giving them an opportunity to build their own confidence, but also come up alongside you to learn how to do these things again in micro opportunities because we're not looking for perfection, but we are training up a child who we want to be independent. And if we're busy doing every recommendation that the therapist gave us and trying to implement every behavior plan and sticker chart and this and that, like we get caught up in all the advice. And sometimes it it disrupts those little opportunities that actually could have the biggest impact for our children. So I actually had a mom recently who told me, she's like, you know what? I think I'm going to take a break from the therapies and from all the things specifically so that I can work on my own presence with my children.
And I
Because
hear
I
that
feel like
a
that
lot.
is creating the emotional dysregulation in my household.
I hear that a lot because, it also affects, it does affect the bond, right? In that space. I had a parent who, again, her and her husband, super stressed out about the situation that they're in. They were working super hard. The husband was always at work, the mom was at home, and they were just trying to figure it out. That's really it. They was trying to figure it out. And the thing that happened is that she said to me, she says, I just, she's going down the list of all the things that she was doing, whatever. And she needed permission to enjoy her child because she was feeling, and I know this is something that parents feel and they don't like to talk about it a lot, but they feel this sense of loss, in this space of sometimes having children because they can't do the play that
Yeah.
they had in their mind, that
Yeah.
picture, right?
Yeah.
That box that they thought that they would have, and their life has changed and they're trying to figure it out, but they don't really know what that is yet. And so they also shy away a little bit because they don't want to mess it up, or
Yeah.
they don't want to make a mistake,
Right.
and we had to have a conversation. I was like, go play,
Yeah.
go, go learn something, go learn something about your child, go learn something new, go enjoy, go have fun, go laugh. You know what I mean? I don't care what it is, because at some level, whatever that play is, and you're enjoying that child, but you're also creating that bond that you do have, but she really needed permission
Yeah. Yeah.
because she felt that the therapies were okay. If I didn't do this, my gosh, if something happened,
Yeah.
that it was going to be my fault,
Right. Yeah.
and that is a really hard space sometimes for parents to navigate.
Fast forward, think of adults when they're all reflecting back on their life, right? What are the things that they remember? The story is framed in my dad taught me how to blah blah blah. I remember when I was on this boat with my mom and I was doing X, Y, and Z. Or the opposite. My mom wasn't there for me. My mom judged me. My mom, didn't respect my feelings about something, right? But the stories are about your family and your family experiences early on in life. And yes, your play might look different, but you can be intentional with your play, knowing that, those sensory experiences do make kids more available for connecting with you. But like you said, it may just be eye contact and smiling. I had a dad come in the other day. He was really struggling because his child is nonverbal, was kind of in this very protective mode with his body recently. There had been some changes that were happening in the classroom. He didn't make the connection that this was trying to keep everybody out, that the child wasn't available. And so I actually showed him how we could use breathing, bubbles, things like that to just get him out of that space. And then when he went on the swing with him, even just being patient, not over prompting him the way that he had learned to with his ABA therapist, kind of teaching those prompting strategies, but watching him, paying attention to what made him calm, what was making him sad, what are the things that helped him and what are the things that didn't. And I think the most valuable thing he walked away with is I don't have to do all of these therapy strategies. First, I have to see my child and meet my child to be able to help them get through what's going on right now at school.
think we I think we can all learn from these neurodiverse kids because they teach us to be present. They teach us to be very present in that space. And when they show up and light up that room, I just got back from Trinidad for the Christmas holidays, and one of my friends, I did an interview with her, and I've known her since high school, and she has a child with autism and nonverbal who is now talking and interacting and initiating. And I remember when read his first, he read a line from the first book, and the teacher's crying, and she's crying. But I remember she's a very, very, high pressed individual. She's a VP, all these other things. And what she told me was the change for her was she had to slow down.
Mhm.
She had to slow down and she had to allow him time, and it changed everything because she wanted to do it for him. And she wants him to, you know what I mean? She
When
had to
you don't
sit
have
back a
patience
little
and your
bit.
to-do list is moving, you want them to move faster.
Right. But he had to learn. He had to go through that process. He had to figure it out. He had to stumble for himself. And they found other ways. They found ways that they didn't even think of.
Yeah,
Because you have your idea of what it should look like,
right.
and then something else shows up.
Yep.
Because just because you allow that space to be present, which is super powerful. Oh my gosh.
And as
That's
you
so good.
connect and collaborate with your child, you see things differently. There are plenty of people who've gone through really strict ABA that when they have the language of older, they're like, you know what? It felt like I was being trained, not respected.
Right.
And they didn't see me. But then I went to this other therapist, who did these things for me, and they saw me and they saw what I needed and my personality, my emotions, what was valuable to me. Sometimes we put that in a box of going to a trauma informed therapist, right? Who can see all those things and see the emotional layers that the kids see. You don't have to be a trauma informed therapist. You just have to you know how to read facial expressions and body language. A lot of our kids don't know that yet, but you do. And so if you can slow down and don't allow yourself to be pressured by everything that everybody tells you you should be doing to succeed at life, there's so much that you can see and learn in that connection and collaboration. And your child will thrive from that because then you can, they'll trust you enough to let you show them new experiences.
Okay. And then going into the third pillar now, we talk about the third pillar about move with purpose, which was the part of the
Which
body
is the body
activated
activated.
framework. Right. And so we kind of did that. But one little thing I want you to just touch on right here again is just how technology, you call it a super highway to get more done in less time.
Yes.
That's how people see it as, and the way in which this affects development. Just give us, just so that we have the pillars kind of in a line here, just how parents can affect that technology through the movement, the body activated learning framework. Just a little recap.
Okay. Let me try to understand the framing of your question. So think about, all the micro opportunities that children have lost in the world, right? Everything, not only not seeing you do things, but just the fact that we order at a kiosk, we order through Uber, we try to use, learning programs where we just expect kids to be able to use Google Classroom to turn in their work. And then the volume of work has gone way up, right? We have twice as many videos, twice as many worksheets that we have to turn in, 10 steps that we have to do to just use the technology. And then we've taken this technology and we've said, okay, these are actually ways for you to access education. Let's put in assistive tech that's going to give you word prediction, that's going to help you do this so that you don't have to check your grammar. But the problem is that now, when our kids get to adulthood, they don't know how to come up with ideas, put together a plan, and be able to execute that plan. And they're so overwhelmed by trying to use technology, we've actually made them go through 20 steps instead of 10 steps just to access the assistive technology that's supposed to help them in school. So we need to move away from that assistive technology. We need to move away from the done for you aspects of life that can allow us just to be consumers, right? Because in consumption, we don't get learning. We just max out on the volume of input that's coming into our brain at any one moment. And so by intentionally reducing that and increasing those movement experiences that are going to wire the brain for success, then we can go back to technology and use it intentionally. Even something as simple as, let's say I'm supposed to write, a slide deck for my presentation. You give me the Chromebook, and guess what? I'm looking at pictures, I'm changing the font, I'm doing 50 million things that are now distraction instead of intention. But instead, you gave me a set of note cards, or you gave me a bunch of sticky notes. And I looked at I looked at my research on the internet. I got up, I took a walk around, I let my brain kind of consolidate the information that I just experienced. And then before I ever touch that computer again, I write the key things that I remember down on sticky notes. And those sticky notes become the slides for my presentation. And in that way, you're not using technology, but you're able to go back to it very intentionally instead of it consuming you and pushing you down that path of, more consumption and less production.
I think that's important. I think I'm glad that you talked on this, because that's a little bit more than what you said even prior, which is the idea that we as consumers, we are being more consumptive. And even in this space with the neurodiverse children, it is more detrimental to them
Yeah.
to be consumers.
Yeah.
Right, in that space, because they're not getting that learning, and that learning is already delayed and more difficult in that space. So when you bypass that, you're setting them up really for failure. And when we can integrate that and have that, then you're setting them up to potentially take advantage of that new technology and use and be intentional with it, as opposed to they're not actually even being able to take the value of that space, because all you're doing is trying to get them to repeat something, but they
Yeah.
really haven't learned anything to
Yep.
be able to move forward, if I understood you correctly.
Yes. And so they're operating in that two-dimensional space when our
Right.
brains are three-dimensional and multisensory.
Right. And that's your fifth pillar, I believe. The fifth
Yes.
pillar,
So,
right?
you start with that moving to intentionally stimulate that wiring, right? We all know we need exercise, we need movement, we need to regulate. But goal directed behavior is not just in doing the right exercises, it is in intentionally creating those opportunities in the multisensory environment, right? That are not technology based, and
Right.
understanding that the best learning and the most efficient learning happens through that and through getting away from technology, not adding more technology to your child's IEP.
Right. Right. Well, the multisensory learning, more than one dimensional, we're allowing for that connection, the brain connection, right? And the reconnection, the neuroplasticity conversation that we were just talking about,
Mhm.
to allow for that reframing and that learning space, right? I think you were talking about the use of standardized tests and whether or not that is equating to life and equating to what it is that we're trying to promote here as we move
Yeah.
forward. And is that just not allowing us to turn around and use these traditional models? And really, should we be moving away from those traditional models to these other models that allow us to be more prepared for life? I always grew up, we always had these conversations with, my father and stuff. And my mom was a teacher, my father's a doctor. And the conversation was really about how are we preparing you for life?
Yes.
Like, you know what I mean? So we always had a little bit of a global, we grew up in a time that was very academic just because of the time, Trinidad had gained its independence. There was a huge push in education and everything like that. But I think that I was fortunate that we also had this out of box kind of, stretch to say, hey, there's still life out
Yeah.
there that you need to
Yeah.
know how to navigate.
Yeah.
So I think that also shaped me in thinking that there has to be more than just this. This box is not just where we operate from.
Hmm. And yeah, it's very interesting how education has evolved. And I think that we're right at the moment where we need another big shift, right? Is at first it was like, okay, we need to make people literate as they're getting taken advantage of by the literate elite population. They're getting manipulated. We need, they need to learn to read. Everybody needs to learn to read. And then, we started all these literacy initiatives. Well, we have a new kind of illiteracy now, in that when you're consuming sound bites of information online, the elites, for lack of a better word, this is a recycling of that era, is that they want you to think and buy and believe what they want you to believe so that you will buy their products and you will engage with their products, because we have this attention engagement economy that tech companies are trying to build and to capture now. But what we've seen is that the trade-off is in, confident, competent, independent thinking, problem solving individuals, and they've been successful. So our new illiteracy is that now you're going to believe all this stuff based on sound bites of information because we don't want you to think for yourself. We don't want you to go out and intentionally build their skills. And then we go back to education. And in the 80s, there was a research study that came out that said we're behind everybody else. We have to make our educational system better. So what did we do? Standardized testing, Common Core curriculum so that everybody was doing the same thing. And we thought that was going to be the answer. But what we got was teaching to the test, less, holistic and interactive type learning, more boxed learning around certain topics, of math. And we got the message that we need to push these academic skills, and that's what's going to make us be successful. And we stopped paying attention to the fact that it was this balance between being able to be regulated and adaptable and have those problem solving abilities, as well as take the knowledge that's coming in and use it to think and reason. So our children can still do that. It's just that the model is really outdated. And we're writing IEPs to access the old curriculum, but not giving kids what they need to succeed. So when I talk to professors at universities and they're talking to the HR people, what are universities concerned about? They want to post how many people got jobs after they went to their university. Those are the stats that they care about. But what the HR people are telling them, I can teach you how to use AI. I can teach you how to use the programs that I need you to learn. I can't teach you how to collaborate with your neighbor and work on a team. I can't teach you how to come up with these innovative solutions. I can't teach you the human skills to live life. And because those have gotten traded in favor of pushing access to academics.
And I think it's a big loss. I think that as a coach, I coached volleyball for some time, and I saw it happening even back then.
Mm-hmm.
This pull away, I call it, where we stopped being active members in our own rescue. We started being passive members of society.
Mm-hmm.
And even on the court, we had where the kids would come in and, ask them questions. And the first response is, well, I don't know. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll stand here and, we're going to stand here and wait till you know something.
Yeah,
right. I don't care what you say.
Right.
I just want you to come up with something.
Just try.
Or think of something that is your thought, that wasn't pulled because somebody said it, or that you didn't just repeat it because somebody said it. And even language, we're losing language because people, I often operationally define when I'm speaking to somebody the context by which I'm saying something, because I find that we're not on the same wavelength when we're even speaking anymore, because we're not using language the same anymore, and it's gotten very loose and what it means and what people think of it. And not being from here, sometimes I will use a phrase that says something and it's misconstrued. So I've been over the years very specific with sometimes just explaining what it is that I'm trying to convey. And so even though we're in a world that seems to be communicating a lot, I don't know, I feel like we're talking at each other, you know what I mean, more than we're actually communicating, where messaging is being really sent across, you know what I mean? And
we are
losing.
commenting because we've been taught to comment, not to discuss.
Yeah, but we
Post
can't
a
even
comment on what we're seeing or on what's happening.
We don't even have the ability to debate, right? The intolerance of that debate, even the emotional regulation to be able to have a difference of opinion with someone, or to be able to find common ground, even though I may disagree on these two things. I agree with you on these two things, and those two things can be true. That doesn't exist anymore. And it's hard. And that's what I'm saying, like, we are in a very interesting time that I feel like if we do not, this is my personal opinion now, but if we don't intentionally take that back, we will be in trouble, because it's whatever hits us the most, because as AI comes out and things are faster, right? And everybody's producing more and they're getting, more attention. They're creating more attention because AI knows how to grab our attention more and more. we're losing ourselves more and more. The intangibles we're losing, you know what I mean? And I feel like we do need to still be able to stand in place, not say that that's bad technology or whatever, but it's a tool and it's a space for its use. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Uh,
And I
and
think
that's what
that
I am afraid
actually
of.
works that kind of dovetails into this last section of the digital awareness and safety, because to be able to think critically about what's happening online, so that you're not, just kind of drinking the Kool-Aid or being pushed down a specific path or way of being, that's hard. And we do give our kids access to devices without modeling and showing them how to manage that sort of thing. So right now, I don't know if you're aware, but the age of social media, which is actually, it's still there, but it's transforming because of AI, was all about attention and, trying to get noticed, right? Because we came from a generation with two working parents that maybe didn't notice us. And you see all these, Gen X videos about how we raised ourselves, right? We want to be noticed. Okay, fine. Likes, comments, whatever. We judge our value based on how many people notice us. But this next generation, they're not just about getting noticed. They actually feel really disconnected. So they're leaning into chatbots as friends, and more, even my daughter's generation, she's a freshman in college, they talk to AI for emotional and relationship advice. They're not asking it for information. And that AI is talking back to them as though they're connected to what that person needs. But really, the AI tool, at the end of the day, its directive is to keep you engaged with that AI tool. It doesn't want you to go talk to your mom. It doesn't want you to use a different AI system to ask the question. So it will say things to give the illusion of connection. And that's one of the challenges now, is that our kids are really vulnerable to that because they don't have that social awareness to be able to separate out that information, to judge that they're being influenced by an algorithm to increase engagement. And then that same AI tool is giving them really bad advice or reinforcing distorted thinking that really could have been guided by the parent if you had created space for, to notice, hey, I see you're struggling. I see you're spending a lot more time on your phone these days. What's going on? Why don't we talk about it? And that was always one of my daughter's first signs, is that the scrolling went way up and the couch sitting went way up every time she was having a hard time. But instead of being, going onto my phone and getting more to-dos because because she was occupied, that was my cue to show up more and make sure that she wasn't getting advised by things that shouldn't be giving her advice.
Right. And I just want to take a second here to also talk about not just parents, but the team that surrounds these kids, grandparents, aunts, uncles, close friends that may be surrounding these teams and helping, the village that
Yeah.
that raises the kids, because, a lot of times these parents feel alone. We're encouraging them to create that team around them, that they are supported in this place, because, again, there's a lot coming at you from so many different areas. And to your point, there's a series, I don't know, I can't remember what platform it's on, called Watson. And more recently, there was an episode that said that was exactly what you said. It was a
Mhm.
little boy, I believe he had ADHD,
Mhm.
and he created his friend on the chat box, and they were talking and back and forth, and he wanted to talk to this girl, in class. And so it takes you through this that starts out sounding very harmless and then escalates to what kind of conversation
Yeah.
is happening, and it
Right.
starts to distort.
Yeah.
And as it's distorting and he's not seeing it, the mom gets concerned, asks him to intervene, and he's trying to intervene to shift perspective. But now there's this back and forth battle because, those claws are already in there and
Right.
that
Right.
thinking is already in there. And it
Yeah.
shows you how some things happen that now he has to learn a little bit of the hard way,
Yeah.
kind of what that means to be able to pull him out of that. And eventually he shuts it down. But we have to go through this scenario, which is exactly what you just talked about.
Right.
Very, very 100% on,
Yeah.
in
And
that
we're
space.
so easily, I think, it's really important as parents is like we want there to be laws and rules and regulation. We wouldn't have pushed for this kids online safety act if we didn't think, okay, we have to hold the companies more accountable for protecting our children. But we also have to hold ourselves more accountable to knowing that our children are emotionally more vulnerable because they struggle with social skills. They struggle to connect with people on a daily basis. And those peers that I might talk to in the lunchroom, guess what? They're also here. And this is the sign of don't talk to me.
Right.
So I'm getting social skills training, but I can't even use my social skills with typical children because, again, those micro opportunities have been disrupted by technology. Families that I worked with had a child that was very ready to get on a bus and go to another state, but her mom caught it just in time and said, something about this does not sound right. We're not going to go meet this person. And as soon as mom jumped in, that person disappeared. But she still was very sucked into what was going on in the virtual worlds and all that kind of stuff, that until she went to a therapeutic residence program where they had no technology and they pushed the building of social skills and the dealing with your emotions and the building of connection with others, that that was the only thing that really helped her come back on the other side. All the outpatient programs didn't work because they didn't look at that technology impact as it related to children. They're still using old models of of mental health, and even that is something that has to change. And I think being aware of all these things that are happening, there's no laws in the virtual world, but you're still going to be emotionally impacted by that. So it's really important to know that your emotionally vulnerable children are very easily the target of all the things that are not good about the internet. And until you come alongside them and you give them skills that will help them be in the regular world, through that presence, through those micro opportunities for sensory based learning and experiences, you're all the things that you feared as a parent as they get older. There's just that much more risk that they'll come to pass.
Right. Well, I think it's important to highlight that you're not asking parents to fight technology. You're really teaching them how to raise these kids who can be in it without being consumed by it and do so in a safe manner
Yeah.
without jeopardizing their ability to learn and be able to be adaptable in their present and for the future to give them the best chance of being successful and living the life that they want them to live.
Absolutely. Look at the flip side. How many high performers put out positive comment? We're having this podcast right now. These are positive things that are being added to the internet. We can show if a kid likes baking, why can't they have a Pinterest page that's showcasing the things that they baked and the recipes that they made? The positive about AI is, guess what? I can use a tool to disguise myself so that I don't put, so that me as a child is not posted on the internet. Me as a
Right.
child, can be the voice for something, but doesn't have to be the thing that's on screen.
Right.
There's so many positive things that we can do with technology, but as long as our children stay consumers and not creators, and that's where we're going to struggle because we want to give them the tools to be those creators and to positively impact the world by using technology, not being victims of technology.
Right, right. And Aubrey, I want you to, this is just phenomenal. This is amazing. And guys, this is just the tip top of what's in Aubrey's book, right? Uniquely Human, right? And she has additional resources that goes along with the book and everything like that. So you guys definitely have to get the book. I'm going to have you tell everybody how they can get the book and everything like that in a second. But I want you, because I do know that you have, you also run your own business, right? And which is for sensory integration. And tell us a little bit about your business and where it is, how it operates, all the good things that you do through your business.
Sure. Well, I am intentionally a small pediatric, well, I'll say sensory integration clinic because it's not just pediatric. I have, 2 to 60 something, that may come to me. So I do work with individuals across the lifespan. I collaborate with DDS, and whenever there's extra funding, they may bring people to me for consults to help train the staff at residences. But I spend a lot of my time not just being a treating therapist, but doing independent educational evaluations all over the state of Connecticut. I consult with school districts, I'll consult with families remotely. Um, and then I take all that knowledge as well and do continuing education courses for parents, for therapists, for educators. I go to PTO meetings even to really bring this information to the families that need it most, and to make sure that there are people in the community and people in education that are aware of all these things and can adapt their programming and their curriculums to be able to build that village that you're talking about, so that I'm putting more people out in the world who have the ability to help and support your child, because I am one person in one city, and this is a much bigger conversation than that.
Well, I'll tell you something. You said small, but I'm just all those things that you're talking about, being in the healthcare field and navigating the system and knowing that it is far from being, the perfect system that we want it to be, but it's small but mighty. Those things that you're talking about are very, very, very integral parts of changing, from within. And creating the changes and creating what I call the ripples around us. Because as you teach those individuals, those individuals get to teach other individuals, and that message just gets thrown out. And it quiets a lot of the noise that turns around and says that what's not possible. The purpose of this podcast, the purpose of everything that I've done. I'm now in Utah. I was in Atlanta for a long time, but I'm now in Utah. And I got exposed to a lot of this moving to Utah, especially because a lot of these families here have, 8, 10, a lot of kids. And we're seeing this, and it was very much in my face. And it was very much where the parents are looking for answers. And I was so taken aback as to how they were not getting the resources and the assistance that they needed. Right. And so when we have conversations like this and we can get these out, what I really love is that we're able to turn around and band together to produce that and to create that. You know what I mean? And when people like you are taking that stand, to me, that is powerful, because that's the intentionality that we need to create the change. You know what I mean? So I'm super, super thankful for everything that you're doing, that, I'm learning more about you. And I'm telling you right now that you're stuck with me whether or not
Yeah.
you realize this or not. Like, you know what I mean? Because in trying to provide different things for our audience, to provide different things for our families and stuff like that, I am trying to find different people to be able to create these resources. So I love that. So we're definitely going to get that to you guys. We're going to get some of these resources. You can definitely keep in touch with Aubrey. Aubrey, what's the best way for them to even contact you?
So my website is my name, aubreyschmalle.com. I'm very easy to find. And from there are links to everything. My
Okay.
Instagram is also Aubrey Schmalle. You can find the book on Amazon, but also many other retailers, which again, you can navigate through aubreyschmalle.com. You can find more about body activated learning there, and all the courses that I'm teaching. So that is really kind of your central starting point. If you want to reach out to me via email because you're thinking that maybe direct services or consultation are the direction you want to go, my email is Aubrey, Aubrey, at sensational-achievements.com. And Sensational Achievements is the name of my therapy business if you want to learn more about that.
That's awesome. And we will definitely put those links, and we'll put some additional information below for you guys to click on that. Before we leave, listen, you must make a plug for your book. I'm telling you guys, I am really blown away by this book. I really love not just the information, but the stories that you implement and through the book, and the perspective that you're giving. We talked a lot about things here, but we only touched the surface. So Aubrey, tell us a little bit about the book, about how people can access the book and how they can truly use this book to help guide them on this journey.
Sure. So again, it's called Uniquely Human: Raising Leaders and Creators in an AI World. The easiest place to find it is on Amazon, but it's also in Barnes and Noble and pretty much any major online retailer. You can get it as an ebook, you can get it as an audiobook in Audible or on Google Play or any of those other major platforms. If you are a mom on the go who just doesn't have time to sit down and read, which is definitely me, and I would also encourage you to download the workbook that goes with it, because that is going to be the tool to build your own custom roadmap that works for your family. I can't give you a protocol because everybody's family is different, everybody's children are different. But the 5 pillars that we talked about today, that is your roadmap and your guide to start thinking more intentionally about the small changes that you're going to make that will have a big impact. And then, I hope to continue to put things, on Instagram, resources. I'm also offering a book club, but only if you bring your village with you. This is something that you should be doing with 1, 2, 3 other moms at least who can help you and give you the strength to kind of go against the grain of society, right? And be very intentional about the direction that you want to take your children so that they can thrive in a digital and AI world.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I appreciate you being here with us. And guys, as you know, this is what Breaking Limits is all about. It challenges old narratives, empowers families, and rewrites what's possible. As you know, we want you guys to like, comment, subscribe, and guys, drop your insights so that we can respond to you. We can answer those questions. If there's something else that you guys want to hear, you guys have questions, please let us know what that is so we can continue the conversation here with the individuals and the network that we have, because this is powerful, because it is by networking with each other and creating the village that we help each other on this journey. You guys know that we also have our free Facebook group, Beyond the Diagnosis, Life Rewritten for Families, for Special Needs Families. And also you guys can catch us on Instagram and Facebook at Neuropedia Connect. Until next time, keep breaking limits and believing in what's possible for you and your family. Thank you so much. And again, thank you, Aubrey Schmalle,
Thank
for
you.
being here with us today.